Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plots, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Compost is nature's fertilizer. Today, we're going to show you how to build a compost pile. Also, fall is a great time to lime your lawn. We'll show you how to lime based on your soil test results. That's just ahead of the Family Plots, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Goodwin's Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plots. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Tanya Ashworth. Tanya is our local garden expert, and Mr. D will be joining us later to talk about applying lime. Tanya, glad you're here today. We're going to talk about composting. But here's the thing about composting. A lot of people want to do it, but they don't know how to do it. So you're going to help us out today, right?
Yes.
All right. So why do people compost anyway?
Well, there's different reasons. You can make composting as simple or as complex as you want it to be.
Okay.
I go for the simple method.
Yes.
You just put everything in a pile and let it rot.
Okay.
And the reason I do it is for environmental reasons. I don't like to see plastic bags full of leaves sitting out on the curb to be taken to the landfill.
Right.
So my goal is just to not put biodegradable things in a landfill in a plastic bag. But for people who are more serious about composting and plan to use it in their garden, it's a fantastic way to make your own nutrient-rich soil amendment. It has free fertilizer for you. In fact, it contains all of the 22 essential macro and micronutrients that plants need to survive.
Okay.
Let's think about it like this. In a regular bag of fertilizer, you might have your nitrogen, your phosphorus, potassium, and maybe a few trace elements. But when you put parts of a plant that was alive, you know for a fact that that plant contained every single macro and micronutrient needed to survive. So you know that in your compost pile, you're going to get out every single macro and micronutrient that you need to make your plants live.
That's right.
And that's a great reason to compost. Also, when you put it in your soil as an amendment, it helps with pore space, opens up the pore space, allows air and water to transfer in and out to the roots. So those are some really good reasons.
Those are good things, yeah, because you're not going to find that with your commercial fertilizers, that's for sure. Okay, now, what do we add to compost piles, or what shouldn't we add to compost piles?
Okay. Well, simple things to add would be kitchen scraps, like when you're chopping up your vegetables to cook, the ends and the carrot tops and any kind of thing like that. What you don't want to put from your kitchen are things that have already been cooked. Okay. You don't want to put any kind of a bread product or any kind of meat in there. You strictly want to do your vegetables. You can do eggshells. That's not a problem, but I wouldn't do dairy or anything like that. Also from your yard, you've got free material out there as well. Your fall leaves that are about to hit the ground.
That's right.
Just put them into a big pile. Would be simple enough, but you can use your fall leaves, and then in the summertime when you're cutting your yard, you use grass clippings. If you have one of those bag attachments that already goes on your lawnmower, that's a great thing. Or maybe you have a mulching lawnmower, but at our house sometimes we wait a little too long between cuttings and we still have some clippings laying on the ground. You just rake those up and put it in the bin.
Okay. Yeah, those are real good things to use, because I'm like you. I hate to see all the leaves just piled up, you know, in plastic bags on the side of the curb.
The thing I know. The thing to look for, though, what you don't want to put in, if you are cleaning out your garden, you can put in things in your compost pile from your garden. You want to make sure, though, that you don't put in anything that has diseased plant parts. I'm thinking tomato plants, if your tomato plants had a disease. Or if you have an insect infestation on your plant, you don't want to introduce the insects into your compost pile. It's pretty obvious. You don't want to put things like the things you pick up from your dog should not go in there.
Waste.
People ask about manures, and you can use manure in your compost pile, but you want it to be thoroughly rotted before you put that on your garden. I'm talking like a year. And then if you use a compost-based, a manure-based compost in your garden, you want to give a 120-day harvest interval. That
Okay.
means you want to wait 120 days from the time you put it on until the time you harvest your vegetable. And I'd be especially careful if you're growing root vegetables in
Sure,
it.
I would, yeah. Okay.
So those are some of the do's and don'ts of what can go in.
But what about weeds?
No,
No weeds in
no.
the compost pile?
Think weeds that have gone to seed, especially. You
Yeah.
don't want to introduce weed seeds into your bin.
Okay. Now, how hot do we need to get that compost pile so we can burn up some of those weed seeds and some of these other things you're talking about?
Well, if you do get some weed seeds and diseased plant parts in there, you need to get your compost pile to about 131 degrees.
Wow.
Between 131 and 170 degrees hot. Hot is that hot to be able to start killing off some weed seeds. And it depends, I've seen research, it depends on what kind of weed seeds you have. Like different weeds die at different temperatures
Sure.
and lengths of time. So I can't really say it has to be this for this many hours because
Okay.
it just depends. But it needs to be at least 131 degrees for at least 3 days, and
Okay.
then the longer the better. And I can tell you that it can be kind of difficult here to really get a hot compost pile. And the reason is because we get our grass clippings and the things that really heat up your pile seasonally. So it can be a challenge to get your pile hot enough to kill the weed seeds.
Okay. All right, you want to get us started? Let's see
Sure.
how this thing works,
Sure.
okay?
Okay, well here we're going to have a 2-pile system, and this is fantastic because this means that what we get out we can use in our garden. What would happen if we just pile everything in just one big pile and kept adding to the top is all of our good stuff would be on the bottom. We could never get it out. So what we're going to do is build a pile. The ideal pile is going to be 3 feet tall, 3 by 3 by 3.
Okay.
And then when we get it the right height, we stop.
Okay,
And we
we
let
stop.
it decompose, and we start putting our fresh stuff in the other bin.
All right.
So that's what we're going to do. And we
Okay.
have some wonderful fall leaves
Yeah,
here.
got the leaves.
And these are going to be, they call these browns.
Okay, we'll just dump them in there.
This is going to be our carbon-rich additives here. Rich in carbon. And then we also need to add some greens or things rich in nitrogen.
Okay.
And we have some wonderful things here.
Kitchen scraps.
Kitchen scraps, all sorts of stuff. And I'm going to kind of put these in the center.
Okay.
If you are worried about attracting pests to your compost pile, just kind of bury your kitchen scraps, and that should take care of that.
Okay.
So we're going to kind of put these here in the middle.
Okay, just throw them in there. Okay.
And you don't have to buy a fancy compost crock to put on your kitchen counter. Any kind of a sealable container like this is fine. You know, something with a lid.
Cool.
I know.
Oh, banana peels and all that good stuff. Okay.
Yeah, and so then let's see what else we have. We have some grass clippings. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the grass clippings will give us a good supply of nitrogen. And grass clippings break down super fast. They'll really, really start to heat the thing up.
And we're gonna put that on top, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Break that open. There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have some clippings from our garden here.
Okay.
Not clippings, but older plants
Some
from
actual plants.
the
Yeah.
season, yeah. All right.
Oh, she just tosses that in there.
Just toss it in.
there.
Now, what you need to do is to get your compost pile going, mix everything up.
Okay.
This is what I use.
All right.
Just kind of like a pitchfork. Just kind of shove some of that back in there.
Tell you, have you done this before?
Yes.
All right, looks like you know what you're doing.
And you want to turn your compost pile, ideally, if you want to try to do a hot compost pile, ideally you want to turn it every week.
Okay, every week.
You also need to add water. We don't have the hose out here with us today, but you know you have the water right. If you reach in and feels like a damp sponge.
Okay.
You don't want it soaking wet all the time, but it needs to be a little moist.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So how do we know when it's ready though?
Well, your pile is going to shrink a whole lot.
Okay.
And when it's ready, you aren't going to be able to tell what was a tomato and what was a leaf. It's not going to smell, and it's going to look like just really good potting soil. Look like dirt.
All right, that's what we want at the end of the day, right?
I got this little gizmo to show you. This is another compost pile turner. When you stick it in, these go like this. When you pull it out, the reason you want to turn it is to allow for aeration to get in there. if it's not aerated, you can get yucky smells. You can also get some aeration going by putting a pretty large limb in the center of it to open things up.
Just open it up.
There's that. And then you can also get a thermometer.
Okay.
Compost thermometer to stick in there. Of course, ours isn't going to be hot, but it'll tell you low, medium, or hot on there and the temperature, so you can see if you're getting it hot enough to kill any weed seeds.
All right, well, Tanya, we appreciate that demo. We hope, folks really get into composting now. Thank you much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. D, we're going to talk about applying lime. So what is lime?
Actually, what we apply on our yards is limestone. Lime is a derivative of limestone. When you heat limestone, it creates calcium oxide. And when you hydrate it, you create calcium hydroxide, which is also quicklime, which is used in the cement industry. But limestone is what these lime products are made from. Limestone is calcium carbonate, very simply. And it comes in several different formulations. The first one that we used for years and years, farmers used, was agricultural ground limestone. Later they came out with dolomitic limestone, which is agricultural ground limestone with magnesium in it, which is really, really good if you need magnesium in your soil. And most of the time we do need small amounts of magnesium, and so dolomitic agricultural ground limestone is a real good product. Pelletized lime is very popular with homeowners.
Oh, yes, it is.
And the reason is, if you've ever tried to scatter agricultural ground limestone, you can understand that it's kind of difficult to work with. And let me get a little bit out here.
It's real fine stuff.
Yeah, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Let's see here. And in the back end of your pickup truck, or in that spreader right there, it's so fine, some of it is so fine that it will actually clog the spreader up. So the pelletized lime is a lot easier to spread with spreaders. Unfortunately, pelletized lime is made up most of the time of very, very, very fine particles, which can break down rapidly, does a real good job of raising soil pH pretty quickly, but it doesn't last quite as long. Agricultural ground limestone has particles that will go from between a 10 mesh screen to a 200 mesh screen, and most of them are within the 60 to 100 mesh range, which you have some pretty big particles which take longer to break down. It's kind of a slow release deal.
That's what I'm thinking.
And so if you use agricultural ground or dolomitic limestone that's not pelletized, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years for some of that lime to take effect, but it's going to spread. But you do have some fine particles also that will work pretty quickly. With the pelletized lime, you probably need to check your soil a little bit, quicker than 3 years down the road. You probably need to check it in 2 years, because it may raise your pH quicker and higher than you expected it to a little bit, and then, kind of fizzle out, at the end of that 2 or 3 year period.
Okay. Well, look, so we get our soil test results back from the lab, Miss Debbie.
Got one right here.
And she tells us we need to add lime. So where do we go from there?
And you can see here, it's 1.5 pounds per 100 square feet. The pH, water pH, is what you look for.
Right.
And it's 5.9, which is not really too acid.
Not too bad.
You like most of our vegetable crops in Bermuda grass, what you want it between 6.5, 6.2 to 6.5. So the recommendation is 1.5 pounds per 100 square feet. Well, I understand we've got about a 4,000 square foot area here that we're going to need to be applying lime to, and this is where the soil test was taken. And so to figure that out, 1.5 pounds per 100 square feet, we'll get it to the 1,000 square foot range, is 10.5 pounds. And then It's 4,000 square feet. Multiply that times 4, so it's 42 pounds.
42 pounds
of lime is limestone is what we need to put out right
Okay.
here, and that's really handy because this pelletized limestone that we have here came in a 40-pound bag, so
Okay,
it's
so
just
it's
almost
right on
perfect.
it.
There'll be no waste. You want to have one of these sitting in your garage for the next 10 years, like I did with that.
All right, so you're going to demo how we're going to spread our limestone, right?
That's right.
Okay.
And before I do that,
Okay.
what I like to do with a spreader, and this is with fertilizer or with lime, I like to start with a low rate, because the worst thing you can do is pour a bag of fertilizer or lime in a spreader like this and get about 1/4 of the area covered and you're out of,
I knew
you've used
you were
up
gonna say
all the
that, yeah.
recommended rates. So
Uh-huh.
you've got a really, really high rate in some areas and nothing over here
Right.
where you need it.
That's smart, though.
So I try to put a half out at one application going in one direction,
Okay.
and the other half going directly, 90 degrees,
Okay.
or 180 degrees, different direction. Okay. So let's go ahead and go with this, and I'm gonna
Okay, now let's get
I'm
over
gonna
here.
set this right here. Guess I'm gonna set this on about 5. I really don't have a clue. I don't know how, so I'm gonna go low rather than high. And that's got that open about 1/3,
Okay, yeah, I see
30%
that.
those
Okay.
openings there. Okay.
All right. Now, is that your old trusty spreader right there?
Mm-hmm. Trusty pocket knife here
And you're parking that?
that all farm boys had when I was growing up, and used to carry them to school. You had to have a pocket knife with you. And can't do that nowadays.
No.
I noticed this pelletized lime is also dolomitic, and that's a good thing. Okay, we're moving right now, so let me turn that
yeah,
off. I
let's
notice
come
I'm
down
going
from the
down. Okay, I'm gonna start going long ways, and I'll get a feel for a half arch spreading. I think it probably throws at least a 6 or 8 foot spread.
Okay.
So I think I'll just walk down the middle first.
Ready?
That little spot right there got limed really well.
It'll be high.
So here we go. All done and all through.
So you got it finished, right?
Got it done.
All right. Now, does that need to be watered in or anything, or we let Mother Nature handle that?
Mother Nature will take care of that.
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. What my hands, it will do a good job of taking it on down. I mean, these products are water soluble, to some extent, and so Mother Nature take it on down. If you want to speed it up a little bit, it's okay to irrigate. If you want to speed the process up a little bit, but not necessary.
Not necessary. And again, how long you think before we see some improvement in the soil pH?
You should see some improvements with the pelletized lime, fairly quick. I mean, this is the fall of the year, so next spring, if you check your pH, I guarantee you'll be better next spring than it is right now.
So be ready to go.
Be ready to go.
All right, Mr. D, we appreciate that demo.
It was
All right.
fun. Thanks.
All right, catch your breath. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us a letter or an email with your gardening questions. Send your email to familyplot@wkno.org. The mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. All right, here's our Q&A session. Tanya, you help us out, okay?
Okay.
All right, here's our first viewer email. I need to try to thin out some limbs on my plum trees. Any help with which limbs to cut other than the ones I can reach? And this is from Miss Debbie. So what do you think about that, Mr. D?
Well, Miss Debbie, this is absolutely the worst time of the year to prune a plum tree. But if you can wait until the end of the winter, February, March, then that is a really, really good time, and you can really, really, really take out a lot of limbs, especially if you haven't pruned that plum tree in the last several years. You can open up the center of the tree, limit it to 3 or 4, maybe 5 main scaffold limbs, take out any limbs that are crossing, take out any limbs that are growing back toward the center of the tree. Of course, take out any dead or damaged limbs. And personally, I would make sure that none of the limbs, none of that tree is over 8 feet tall.
Yeah,
That way,
that's a good point.
you won't have any trouble reaching the limbs next year. So if you've got a 2-foot long lopping shears, you know, you can work from the ground. I hate to work peach, plum, and nectarine trees from a ladder. Personally, I'm going to work them from the ground. Now, apples and pears are different.
Right. We definitely want you to be safe out in the garden, Miss Debbie. So yeah,
Right.
that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that. All right, so here's our next viewer email. When pruning my 3-year-old hybrid tea rose bush in February, which stems should I prune? The old thick stems or the new thinner ones? And this is from Miss Juliet. And she knows that you're supposed to prune later in February, so that's a good thing.
That's
So
a good
Tanya,
thing, yeah.
can we help out a little bit more than that?
Yes, I would say you want to prune both. In fact, you're going to cut it back pretty severely.
Okay.
At the end of your pruning session, you want to have maybe 4 or 5 main stems, and they're only going to be about 3 feet tall.
Right.
And you're going to take off everything else. You want to make sure that you kind of open up the center. That allows for good air circulation and helps with the black spot that we get on our rose
That's
leaves.
notorious for that. Okay.
So yeah, you're going to severely prune it back.
Okay.
It's
And
almost
again-
like the plum, except for the 3
Exactly.
feet.
Yeah, 3
Yeah,
feet,
exactly.
right? Open center, right? Good
Yes.
air circulation in there, like Tanya was talking
And the
about.
same rules as far as any kind of dead limb, go ahead and take that off. Anything disease crossing, you don't want 2 limbs rubbing together. So
That's right.
just like on a plum tree, just smaller.
Right, and anything growing inside.
Yes.
That's right. So it is just like the plum tree,
Yeah,
isn't it?
open center, the vase system.
Yeah, that's it. All right, Miss Juliet. Thank you, Tanya. That helps you out. All right, here's the next question. This is a good one. There's a black, green, and yellow striped caterpillar eating my parsley. What is it, and should I be concerned? You already got the smile on your face. What is
Yes,
that,
because
Tanya?
that's happened at my house before. Yes, those little suckers can eat a whole parsley plant really fast. And those are the caterpillars for the black swallowtail butterfly. So it just depends on if you'd rather have the parsley or the butterfly. I tend to find in my garden I have worse problems with them if I put the parsley kind of all by itself in one pot. But if I kind of put the parsley in the middle of a bunch of other things in my garden, I don't know. I haven't had as much, they haven't been able to find it as much. I'm not sure, but it seems like if it's in a pot by itself, it's like a magnet.
It's attacked. Huh?
Yes,
How about that?
yeah.
I wonder why is that? But that's what it is, the black swallowtail. Okay. And what's Tennessee state butterfly?
The
Zebra
zebra
swallowtail.
striped swallowtail.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
All right. So yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned unless she's just plant more parsley.
that's
I think
right.
you'd be all
That's
right.
right.
I think that'd be
Plant
fine.
some in a pot for them, and then hide some among your other vegetables in the garden.
Yeah, I think that'd be just fine. All right, so here's our next viewer email. Where can I get a hat like the one Mr. D wears on your show? And I could use a couple of those button-down collar blue denim shirts also. Thanks, and this is Dr. Smith from right here in Shelby County. So, Mr. D.
Sounds like a Christmas present to me.
that's
Yeah,
right.
Christmas.
Well, I can tell you the hat. My daughter gets me these hats, and I've had 3 or 4 of them over my career, and they are really, really good hats. They come from the Henschel Hat Company, made in St. Louis, Missouri.
All right.
Now you can get them from Sportsman's Guide, different Sportsman's, online, different sports. What am I trying to say? Anything that sells any kind of hunting gear,
sports, yeah.
things like that, you can get them there. Sometimes.
Right, sometimes. Now, what about the button-down denim shirts? How about that?
I think actually this name has even been discontinued. UT Agricultural Extension Service.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I don't think you can get any of these. This is the last.
I think
I'm
that might
sorry.
be it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets to wear that off and ride into the sunset
Right.
with the button-down denim shirt. So there you have it, Dr. Smith. Those would be a nice Christmas gift for you.
Yeah.
All right, here's our next viewer email. There are small black and orange worm-like things on my autumn blaze maple. Are they harmful? And thanks, this is Miss Margie from Collierville. And I got to look at those pictures. They're the larvae of the lady beetle.
It's a good thing.
Beneficials.
Very good.
Yeah, so I guess, she thought that they were, some pests that were,
A lot of people do.
eating up,
Yeah.
her autumn blaze. But look, they're beneficial. They're going to be fine.
Probably are some aphids around there somewhere.
Yeah, I would think so, because
That's
they
what
eat a
they're feeding
lot
on.
of aphids.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But, this time of the year, they're actually congregating on the warmer side of buildings. You know, they're looking for a place to go for the winter time.
Especially
you know
the
that, don't you?
multicolored Asian lady. Yeah.
I seem to have a few in my home every winter. You know, they want to overwinter with me.
Just looking for a warm place. You know?
Yeah, they're just looking for a place to go, a place to hang out. But, you know, that's what that is, Miss Margie. And again, I wouldn't be concerned about that. I think it'll be just fine. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I'm glad that we have a picture to show everybody so they know not to kill them.
Yep.
All right. But Tanya, Mr. D, we're out of time.
Good deal.
Yeah, thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. Remember, we have only one more episode before we go dormant for the winter. I'm Chris Cooper. Thanks for watching. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.